Welcome to the Week 3 Carlisle Sentinel High School preview video, and I'm Perry Mattern, joined by Jake Adams, and I just joined the Sentinel, and Jake, it's good to be along here for the ride, and let's talk some football.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Let's do it.
So we're going to take a run through the games. We'll keep our game of the week last, and we'll talk about that one at the end. Should be a pretty good one. But so let's start with some of the other games. Redland and Dover first off. Redland 2-0. Big win against Carlisle last week, a 19-18 victory, and Dover on the other side lost by a point to Big Spring.
And one thing I just want to highlight from that game real quick is Redland's allowing 3.4 yards per rush, but Duran Ledbetter for Dover is averaging 6.2, so it's one of those battles of who's going to give, who's going to take.
Redland looking to get to 3-0 there. Move on to Mechanicsburg Northern and Mechanicsburg. The Wildcats have been a disappointing surprise, to say the least. 0-2, losing by 10 at Spring Grove last week. Meanwhile, Northern also coming off a loss. You're going to have to expect Mechanicsburg to come out pretty hungry in this one.
Yeah, obviously their offense is what's going for them. They got a suspect defense that's given up a lot of yards, especially against Carlisle in Week 1. One thing of note there, Northern's averaging 7.04 yards per play allowed, and Mechanicsburg's got 5 wide receivers with at least 50 yards receiving so far this season. So, again, one of those who's going to give.
See if the Wildcats can get going there. We move on to Bermudian Springs. That's where Shippensburg is going to be. Now, Shippensburg last week, extremely impressive. You were at that game, beating Chambersburg 15-0. The defense was pretty awesome.
Yeah, they were stepping up there last week. It was a statement game for them coming off a disappointing Week 1. Right now they're averaging just about 4.5 yards per rush. It's a little bit higher than I'm sure they would like to admit that they're allowing, because obviously that's a very prideful team, very prideful defense. They're going up against the running back over in Bermudian, Britton Shelton, who's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. So it's going to be an interesting battle to see if they can stop the run there. They did a good job last week against Chambersburg, but this is going to be a different test. Different
test for sure. Bermudian Springs has thrown the ball just 6 times this season. We move on to Greencastle at West Perry. Greencastle 2-0, big win over Littlestown last week, and West Perry, they're going to have their hands full after getting a taste of the Brighton Fegley show last week.
Yeah, and West Perry's just been getting kind of run over all season long. Their defense has really been struggling with a little bit of transition that they're going through. 7.2 yards per rush allowed. Again, it seems like it's a rushing theme this week, but they do have Chris Lehman, who's done a good job throwing for over 200 yards with a somewhat limited offense, but 179 of those have gone to Jacob Owens, so they're going to need to find a little bit more balance there throughout the offense.
Camp Hill at James Buchanan. Kind of tough to tell where the Lions are at.
Yeah.
They handled Halifax last week 49-0. Kind of tough to tell, though, how good Halifax is of a test, though. But it seems to me that this Camp Hill three-headed monster between Schuster, Williams, and Hope is something that they're going to be able to ride pretty well. And but one thing about this game is this is not the James Buchanan program that we have seen over the last couple of years. This is actually a pretty good team this year.
Yeah, this is going to be a big test. Like you said, Camp Hill's coming off of 2 wins that don't really show too much. So for both programs, this is their first true test of the season to see where each program really is early on. And obviously it's only Week 3, but going into division games, it's going to be a really good marker for where they are. Camp Hill's Michael Hope, it's going to be a battle between him and James Buchanan's Peter Hughley. Hope has got 8 receptions for 279 yards and 5 TDs. Hughey's got 8 receptions, 196 yards, and 1 touchdown. So it's going to be a big battle there in the passing game, obviously.
Trinity at Columbia. The Shamrocks with a tough loss to what has become a pretty powerful Wyomissing program last week. Columbia, meanwhile, lost 49-7 to DeLone Catholic. If you fast forward, or rather rewind to Week 1, Trinity beat DeLone Catholic by 7, so you'd have to believe the Shamrocks pretty big favorites in this game.
Yeah, they got the offense to put up some points there. They've got 600 yards already so far this season. Hunter Geisel's been putting up some good passing numbers early as kind of a surprise quarterback there. But they've allowed 16.7 yards per pass attempt this year, and they haven't faced too many passes either, so the defense there is really going to be tested, especially going up against a wide receiver like Deshaun McIlwain, who's got 11 receptions, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Columbia.
We'll see if the Crimson Tide are able to keep up there. Down in Susquehanna, East Penn is there, and it has been, as I mentioned earlier in the West Perry matchup, they handled West Perry last week, beating them 35-12, and it has been all Brighton Fegley all the time.
Yeah, he's averaging about 220 yards per game. East Pennsboro's averaging 7.2 yards per rush, and a lot of that you can look no further than Fegley for. Unfortunately for Susquehanna, who's really trying to rebuild now, they're in the Tri-Valley. It's going to be a long season for them. They're averaging 2.9 yards per rush, so it's kind of looking like East Pennsboro is going to run away with this one and literally run away with Bryton Fegley. As long as he stays healthy, that kid's going to push him 250 again.
East Penn trying to improve to 3-0, Susquehanna looking for their first win. Now we get to the three games that we are really excited about this week, starting with Cumberland Valley and McDevitt, both 2-0, both are perennial powers, and McDevitt is without Andre Robinson.
Yeah, he's gone, but they've got Matt Geiger at running back, who it's going to pretty much be no different there. It's a two-headed monster for them regardless. Geiger's averaging 9.8 yards per carry, which is going to be really tough for CV to stop. They've got a great defense, obviously, but, I mean, that's a challenge for any team regardless. He's got 195 yards so far this season and 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. I sat down a little bit ago with Coach Michael Whitehead from Cumberland Valley and talked to him just a little bit about the matchup coming up this week. So we're here with Coach Michael Whitehead from CV. We're just talking a little bit about the season so far and their upcoming game with Bishop McDevitt. Coach, first off, you guys have had some interesting wins so far, a couple close ones, a couple comebacks, stuff like that. I mean, talk a little bit about what you've seen from the team so far.
Oh, I mean, we played Spring Grove and Central York the first 2 games. Spring Grove was a physical team. We just made a lot of mistakes against them, which let them in the game. And you know, we were very fortunate at the end. We overcame a couple of those mistakes, and our defense came up big to get the win. And then at Central York, you know, I thought we controlled the game pretty much, except for a couple plays. And but second half we really came alive, which we were playing CV football, and you know, put them away in the second half. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with where we're at. Where I think we're getting better, but obviously this week we gotta get a lot better.
You guys have a really tough Bishop McDevitt squad coming up, and just talk a little bit about what you see from them, especially some of the offensive weapons that they've got for them.
Well, it's nothing new. They always have offensive weapons, usually every year, so it's not a big deal from that standpoint. You know, they're comparable to every other year. You know, they got a big line again, and they got, you know, good running backs and a quarterback that can throw, and always have some wideouts. So it's always a challenge for our defense to contain them. You rarely slow them down. You just got to hopefully contain them and, you know, maybe get them into some mistakes, and then offensively we're going to have to make some plays when they do make mistakes.
Talk a little bit about what are the keys for you guys with the offense to try and get going against them.
Well, I mean, we got to be, you know, we got to be able to mix it up a little bit, and we can't fumble. No turnovers. You know, we've had the turnovers the last couple of weeks have turned into points for the other team, so they'll feed off that, especially with them having a home game. You know, and we can't have any foolish penalties. I mean, penalties happen, but we got to be smart about our penalties, and you know, and then we got to be able to run the ball, and then when we want to throw, we got to be able to hit and make plays. And that was last year. We had some chances to make some plays in the game offensively on passes, and we just missed guys. So we can't do that against them.
All right, so that's what we talked about with Whitehead. That's obviously going to be a really big battle. I'll be covering that game Friday night. Should be a really good one out there in Bishop McDevitt. See if the Eagles can make it 3-0 and stun a couple people.
That'd be a pretty big win for them. Southwestern and Carlisle. Southwestern 0-2 on the year. Carlisle 1-1, and they have provided plenty of offense. Unfortunately for them, falling by a point to Redland last week.
Yeah, I've seen both their games, and man, that spread option is a really good weapon for them. They've got a ton of speed out there. No question about it, they're going to be putting up points all season, and I'm pretty sure even in the Commonwealth they're going to stun a couple people too. But right now they're going up against a Southwestern squad that could give them a challenge. The key here, I think, offensively for Carlisle, and I mean, there's really not much you can nitpick with, but last week they kind of debuted Deshaun Millington more as a wide receiver. Week 1 he was more of a wildcat quarterback, spelled Billy Berger for a little bit, and coming in, you know, that infamous wildcat formation. Last week he came in for a couple plays as well to do the same thing, but they gave him some time out at wideout, and he showed some numbers there. But they've also got, outside of him, they have Deontay Ramsey, who's been putting up insane numbers all year. 200-something yards last week, up there top 10 in the state, I think, all time for one game. But they've also got a third target out there, Michael Wooster, who was quiet in week 2, but he's got some potential there. They really like to use him in week 1 against Mechanicsburg, kind of up the seam. So we'll see if he gets going again. Coach Oswald likes to kind of play the matchups, and he was attacking different zones. Last week was outside, this week 1 was kind of up the seam. So we'll see what he does this week against Southwestern.
Billy Berger really coming into his own there as quarterback for the Thundering Herd as well. Well, our game of the week, Big Spring at Boiling Springs on Friday night, and there are plenty of storylines. If you remember last year, Boiling Springs coming into the game 0-2, Big Spring 2-0. Boiling Springs wins 41-33. Less than a week later, they self-reported the violation that they had used an ineligible player in the game. Big Spring got the victory, and now they get to meet again, and it was a landslide in the voting. Big Spring and Boiling Spring voting online here on Cumberland.com for the game of the week, and I think we can expect more fireworks again this year.
Yeah. Big Spring's definitely got an interesting offense going on. Boiling Spring's got some question marks there. They got John Vaughn back after a season-ending injury last year, but he didn't play in week 2. Week 1 he had over 200 yards on the ground. Week 2 he wasn't there. Big Spring's also missing an offensive weapon in quarterback Garrett Chestnut, who is out right now with an injury. No word yet on what his timetable is to return. They did debut Nick Black, a freshman, last week, and he went 6 for 11 through 100-something yards and a 1 INT. So some good signs there. He's got some work to do, the coach said, but I mean, that's a pretty impressive debut for the freshman, so it'll be interesting. You're going to be over there watching that game, so what do you expect to see?
I expect to see a lot of fun, and I think it's kind of cool, again, that Big Spring's 2-0 and Boiling Springs is 0-2.
Yeah.
And Boiling Springs need this game. I mean, this is not a do-or-die game. Nothing is in week 3, but to go 0-3 would really hurt them, and I think Big Spring on the other side, they may not have, or they did get the win last year, but, in their heads, they know that they lost the game by 8 to Boiling Springs, and now they can improve to 3-0 before heading into a conference schedule or division schedule that they struggled with a lot last year, only had 1 win in conference play, and they could use this as a momentum booster and then put that on to a good year. It's going to be a lot of fun. For Jake Adams, I'm Perry Mattern. Make sure you pick up the football tab in the Friday edition of the Carlisle Sentinel, and we'll be out at our games.